Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing this is why your ex is mid. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. Check out my socials for extra content. The links are in the description. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing this is why your ex is mid. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you might be shocked to hear me suggest that your ex is mid, meaning mediocre or average. You might even be offended. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 reasons why I genuinely believe your ex is mid. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is you were version 1. So point number 1 is that you were version 1. You might think, well, what's all the ones about here? Well, what the ones are about is that you were the original version of yourself when you attracted your ex. Now let's just consider that. You were version 1 when you attracted your ex. You were version 1 when you got together with your ex. And therefore, it stands to reason that when you got your ex, you would have believed they were the best possible person for you. You would have believed this was your best option. You wouldn't have thought, I'm going to settle. You would have thought, this is my best choice to have a relationship with. This is the person I want to be with. And therefore, they were your number 1. They were your number 1 at that time, and yet you were version 1. Now, what does this actually mean? Well, what it means is, if you were version 1 and you got your ex into a relationship, that shows they are the best person you could have attracted at that time. Now, I'm all about growing, improving, and taking things to the next level. I want you to become a version 2.0 of yourself. Now, consider this. When you attracted your ex, if you had thrown out your attraction net out to sea, you would have only been able to attract your ex as the furthest away possible option. We've already established you saw them as your first choice. So they would have been the person you felt that you were punching to get, you were punching above your weight to attract. That was your ex as your version 1. Now, there would have been plenty of people that unfortunately, when you cast your net out to sea, you would have not been able to potentially attract. They would have been beyond your ex. They would have been beyond the size of your net. They would have been beyond how far you could cast it out to sea. Now, what does this mean? Well, it means there are people better than your ex. It means there are people more attractive than your ex, funnier than your ex, more intelligent than your ex, a better connection and vibe than what you had with your ex. There are better people out there than your ex. Now, the only reason you are fearful right now is because at the time of you attracting your ex, they were your number 1. They were the best you could get. But that is only because you were version 1. So consider, if you become a version 2.0 of yourself, what does that mean? Well, that means that you will have a larger attraction net. That means if you cast that out to sea, it will be larger, it will go further, and there will be people that you could attract, which would therefore be, quote-unquote, caught up within the net now, that previously would not have been potential options for you. You cast your original net out, it was smaller, it didn't go as far, it missed a lot of people. As a version 2.0, that larger net, which goes further than before, can attract different people who are more attractive, intelligent, funny, better connection. Now, what does this show? Well, it shows that if you become version 2.0 of yourself, you can attract version 2.0 people into your life. And where does that place your ex? Well, it shows that they're no longer the best option. Now, I'm not saying they're the worst option. The worst option would have been people that you decided not to try and attract at the time of getting your ex into a relationship. Those people that you felt you were better than in some regard. Maybe there were people that you turned down, that you dumped. You chose your ex. You thought they were your best option. So your ex at the time was the best option, They therefore show that they were quote unquote better than some other people. Now, if you become version 2.0, they're no longer the best option, but they're also not the worst option. So where does that place them? It places them middle of the road, i.e. it places them as a mid option. And this is why I genuinely believe your ex is mid. This is why in point number 1, when we're discussing why I believe you can find someone better, why your ex, the dumper in this regard, is not your best choice. They're not someone that you have to beg and plead and try and reason with to get back. There is no need to be scared, because if you don't get them back, you can and will find someone even better. So don't be fearful, don't be frightened, just remember that is why I believe your ex is mid. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And point number 2 is how they dealt with the breakup. Now you're listening to this as a dumpy. You're listening to this as somebody who was severely hurt, quite possibly blindsided. But do you believe the your ex, the dumper, dealt with the situation as best as they could? I mean, I've already suggested you were perhaps blindsided. If you were in that category, you definitely feel your ex could have done better in how they relayed the news. Now, of course, you don't wish for breakup to have happened at all. But even if we just try just for a moment to consider, okay, maybe they had a point. How did your ex, the dumper, deliver this news? How did they convey what they felt? Were they open for you to try and resolve things? Now, I would suggest that most of you listening dumpies are going to say that your ex, the dumper, didn't do as good as they could have done. They didn't behave in the best way. They maybe presented you with so many questions you want to ask but never answered them. Maybe they promised to have a discussion with you and then never did. Maybe their answers were short and also rather cold. You feel that your ex, the dumper, has turned into someone that you barely recognise overnight and you don't know what to do. You think, well, how did my ex, the dumper, go from somebody who I thought loved me to somebody who now seems like a complete stranger? What can I do? Well, if you consider how your ex, the dumper, treated you, you can see it could have been much better. And we're not even talking from a perspective of them not ending the relationship. We're talking about if they're going to say some bad news, couldn't they have done it differently? Couldn't they have been open to try and fix things? Couldn't they have given you that quote-unquote second chance? Whether or not you feel you did anything wrong, do they give you an opportunity to try and work things through? Now, obviously, there will be some instances where you as a dumpy acknowledge that you did a lot of things wrong, you treated your dumper badly, maybe you did things which were unforgivable. If you are in that category, then maybe you don't view things quite as I'm describing, but I would suggest that most of you would say, hey, look, okay, I didn't do great, but neither did my dumper. You know, if I actually think about it, they weren't perfect either, and maybe I could have dumped them, and yet they are the ones who have taken this decision. They didn't want to talk about it, they didn't want to try and resolve it, they didn't want to try and see if there was a way through this. Instead, they threw everything away, and they treated me like dirt. They spoke to me as if they didn't even know me. They refused to listen, they wouldn't have a conversation, they didn't seem to care of the pain I'm feeling. Now, if you think that this resonates with you, what does this say? Well, it tells us that your ex, the dumper, is not good at communicating. If not lots of things they're not good at, but certainly communication is not one of their strongest points if what I'm saying really hits home. And I believe that communication is a real strong, sturdy bedrock of a relationship which is necessary to have a fulfilling, long-lasting connection. If your ex, the dumper, doesn't have that, that is a problem. Now, whatever you may or may not have done, whatever happened between you, if they can't communicate effectively, then they're not going to be a good romantic option forevermore. Sadly, you found this out the hard way. And we can only control the controllables. You know, you can do all of you can to become a version 2.0 of yourself. You can live your life the right way. You can improve in every single metric possible. But if your ex, the dumper, doesn't do the work, then even if you reconnect, what does this mean? It means that you will have a relationship which, once more, you are fearful of what's in your ex's mind because they're not having those conversations with you. They're not explaining things through. They're not treating you like an equal partner. They're keeping things to themselves. They're not having that communication which is necessary. And you might think, well, I'm not very good at communicating myself, but I'm going to work at it. And that's the difference. You're working at it. Are they working at it? We don't know. Most dumpers do not put in the work dumpies do. So if you hear from your expert dumper in the future and you do reconcile, well, that's great. That's brilliant, especially if you've done the work. But what happens if they haven't? What happens if what you see as something exciting and new is actually just a false dawn, because a few months down the line, you're blindsided once more, or something else happens which really throws you? This is sadly the reality for many, many people who realise and come to understand that their dumper is not perfect. Their dumper has problems. And if communication is one of those problems, you're going to struggle in your relationship. Where does this place your dumper? Well, it places them as mid. And that's the best. That's the best possible option. They could be viewed as even less than mediocre. But if your expert dumper has a load of great qualities that you see and you think, okay, I somewhat understand why they ended the relationship. However, yes, they could have done better with how they broke up with me. They could have listened. They could have tried to fix things. They could have given me that chance. Well, that means that although they've got some good traits, they're also missing this huge communication element which is necessary. And that is why, once again, I would suggest that your ex is mid. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. Talking about your feelings can also improve your mental health. It helps prevent the build-up of negative emotions, which can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, and even physical health issues. Speak your heart to free your mind. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast. If you feel that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description. And point number 3 is you need to believe it. So today we're speaking about why I believe that your ex is mid and why I believe that is to be the case. But point number 3 is putting this back into your own mind's dumpies. And that is that you need to believe it. Because if you don't believe your ex is mid, if you believe that your ex is your best option, if you believe that your ex is the king or is the queen, then you are never going to get them back. And the reason for this is because you would be living your life through scarcity. You're fearful, you're scared. They are my best option. If I'm not with them, I will never be happy again. I need to beg, I need to plead. I will be tearful every single day I'm not with them. Now, if you live your life in that way, then you are putting them on that pedestal and they are never going to want to reconnect with you. Now think about this. Would you want to be in a relationship with someone who made you feel uneasy due to the fact of how low value that person is? Now that might sound confusing, but let's break it down. If you are putting them on a pedestal, what you're saying is they are better than you. And if they will feel it, the way you treat them will make them feel that they are better than you. Are they going to want to be in a relationship with you if they see you as someone who acknowledges that they, i.e. you themselves, are lower value than them? No, unfortunately, very few people are going to want to go back into a relationship with somebody that they've dumped, who they look at and see as worse than them, and that is being promoted by the dumpee. The dumpee is actually screaming from the rooftops, you are better than me, and I need you to function. If you're not in my life, I can't live the way I want to. I can't achieve anything. I'm just going to be on my hands and knees begging, crying, screaming. Is that attractive? Is it attractive to be with someone who is not emotionally stable-minded? It's sadly not the case. And I'm not trying to lessen in any way the struggle that you go through, dumpees. I've been through this in my own life. You know, everybody as part of this community has had these moments. So this isn't about looking down on dumpees who are struggling. Absolutely not. But what it's saying is, if you want to get your ex back, you have to be a certain type of person. You have to be a version 2.0 of yourself. You have to have a stable mindset. But if you come across as being someone who sees your ex as better than you, they are very unlikely indeed to want to be with you again. And this is why point number 3 is so important, because I'm talking about today why your ex is mid. And the fact is, point number 3 is you need to believe it. Whether you do right now or not, you need to get to that position, because you can't fake it. If you don't believe it, if you don't believe your ex is mid, you will live your life like they are the king or the queen. No, you need to respect them. You need to be polite. You need to be positive in any interaction, but don't put them on the pedestal. They are not the princess. They are not the prince. They are not that person. They are mid. You can and will find someone even better than them. You are good with or without. It doesn't matter. If you get into that mindset, you will not be emotionally unstable. You will not put them on the pedestal. You will not beg or plead. You will not try and reason. If they don't want to be with you, then fine. That's their loss. It's not yours. You will find somebody even better. And therefore, point number 3 is the most important point of them all. Because it doesn't matter what I say. It matters what you think. So even if I say your ex is mid, unless you actually believe it, you will be living with a scarcity mindset. No, you need to be living with an abundance mindset. The feeling of, well, if I don't get them back, that's fine. I'll just find another 5, okay? I'll find another 5 girlfriends, another 5 boyfriends. And I will decide which of them I think is the best. Because I will always have options and I will never be alone. Never, ever, ever feel scarcity. Never, ever, ever think that your ex is too good for you. And always remember that your ex is mid.